Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Nick Rendell, your question, please.
My 87-year-old mother pays just over 50% more than me for electricity. Why has Ofgem been so hopeless at protecting the vulnerable?
Why is your 87-year-old mother paying 50% more than you?
Well, she's not anymore. Actually, I changed it at the weekend.
Oh, right. I was going to say, you could protect her rather than Ofgem.
I only discovered it at the weekend, and we've sorted it out. But my point is really that I think someone who's 87 is maybe her eyesight's not as good. The internet is the only way you can get really good prices. And I don't give a damn how much the people in this room pay, because they can all access the market, perfectly easily access the market, although I think 70% of the population choose not to change their utility prices, which is their lookout. But I am concerned about people who don't have internet access and can't access the sainted Martin Lewis's website to get the best prices on the market, which is incredibly lower than the standard rate price, which 70% of the population pays.
Lisa Nandy is the Shadow Energy Secretary. What do you say?
Well, I would say that the energy market is not competitive enough. I would say that it can be incredibly confusing, and it makes it particularly difficult for people like your mum, who aren't necessarily on the internet, like you said, can't necessarily weed out where the best deals might be found. But actually, I do care about everybody else as well, because it has become increasingly clear in recent years that most of us are getting ripped off by the energy market and the way that it works at the moment. Today we saw British Gas announce a leap in profits of 31%, and yet we've seen a dramatic fall in the wholesale price of gas, and those falls have not been passed on to consumers. There was a body called the Competition and Markets Authority that was commissioned to look at the way that the energy market is working. That found that consumers have been overcharged to the tune of £1.2 billion a year every year between 2009 and 2013. The truth is that the Energy Secretary says she's been crystal clear that the companies need to change their behaviour, but the energy companies have been crystal clear that they're not listening. In fact, when she wrote to the Big Six not that long ago, only 2 of them could be bothered to actually reply. So I think we need real action to bring proper competition into this market. Next month, the CMA will report. They said last year that we should have a safeguard tariff to make sure that people, particularly the vulnerable, get the best deal in the market. They got a lot of kickback from the industry on that, and what I want to see next month is some really bold proposals that give us real competition, that give us decent deals, and I want to see a government that is actually prepared to step in and act, and not just lecture the energy companies who aren't listening.
All right. So we're all getting ripped off, and the energy companies ignore your energy secretary.
Well, first of all, I have to point out that if we'd had what Labour wanted at the last election, we'd have had an energy price freeze, which would mean a cap, exactly, which would mean that we wouldn't have been seeing the kinds of falls that we're seeing now.
That's not true. You know that.
This government that's had the CMA look into this situation. And more than that, though, as you will know, we've brought through legislation that means simpler tariffs, but also energy companies having to flag up to people when they're on a more expensive tariff than they ought to be.
But
so
what
actually,
has it achieved?
we are taking. Well, it's a lot more.
What have you achieved?
A lot more than you achieved over 13 years, which saw competition exit the market, and we're trying to get competition back in. So I don't think it's quite so straightforward to say that this problem has arisen now. What we're doing is making sure that Ofgem does have teeth, making sure the market does operate effectively, making sure that consumers do know whether they're on the best tariff or not, and making those tariffs simpler. And that's probably why that gentleman knows, actually, that his mother's not on as good a tariff as she ought to be.
The tariff system is mad.
What?
The tariff system is mad. If you try and actually find out how much you're paying per kilowatt hour, it's virtually impossible. I've never known a market that can be so mismanaged. And I think, again, it's not, I don't think it is the companies. I think it is Ofgem who have structured the system And if you go onto a website, you try and find how much you pay per kilowatt hour. And the tariffs are buried so far away, it's virtually impossible to find it.
You sit at the back there.
I think the regulators are the ones that need to be brought to book. The companies, while they're in private hands, are always going to try and maximise their profits, and it's up to the regulators to control that and to stop people getting ripped off. And all those British gas customers that haven't had a price decrease should get a rebate today.
John Nicholson.
Well, you'd need a PhD in applied maths to understand the tariffs, and maybe that's what we should be teaching 11-year-olds at school to help them with later life. Look, I think it's an absolute disgrace that old people are sitting in their homes shivering and scared to turn on their energy supplies. It is disgraceful. It's gone on for far too long. We don't have a functioning system of competition. And one of the problems, of course, is that people don't switch. And they don't switch because they can't understand the benefits of switching. And many of them stay with the old utility companies that have been privatised. And so a lot of people are paying much more than they need to. And they get very little help from the government in understanding it. And one of the disgraces, of course, is when energy supplies come down in price, those are not passed on to the consumer. But when they go up, then they're passed on to the consumer as quickly as the energy companies can possibly do. So they're rascals, the energy companies, and I think they need to be called to heel, and they need to be much more strictly regulated.
Theo Paphitis, you come to the defence of the energy companies? We've only got a minute or two left now.
We talked about the regulator, and you're right, they've got to be called to account here, but, you know, each company has their tariffs. They've got more details on our usage than we have. They know exactly what we're spending. It's not rocket science for them to automatically put everybody on the right tariff that's best for them. But for some reason, they don't wish to do so. So it's down to the regulator.
So they could be instructed to do so.
It's dead easy. It's dead easy. Absolutely easy.
Well, we've legislated for energy companies to have to be clear with people when they're not on the right tariff and to point them towards
you don't have to be clear, you don't have to notify them, you don't have to do anything. It's really, really easy, this. You just do it.
Yeah. June.
Exactly.
You're nodding in the
I'm with Theo.
Okay. All right. You sir there on the left. We've got to come to an end now. Yes.
I know it's Stratford upon Avon, so I might be in the minority here, but why don't we nationalise the energy sector? Because it should work for the benefit of the people.
That ship has sailed, unfortunately.
That ship has sailed, she says. And the last point here from you, madam, here.
I have a friend who moved to Spain. They get the winter fuel allowance.
Yeah.
How can that be?
Yeah. And again, that's something that we are changing and announced, I think, at the last budget, that we're not going to be paying the winter fuel allowance to people living in countries like Spain.
The person there, yes, you. Yes, in the check shirt.
Do you not think that the government should be helping smaller energy firms to grow so that bigger energy firms don't have a monopoly over the market?
Especially because what we really need to see is a lot more competition in where our energy comes from. And what this government has done when it's attacked renewables and removed overnight the subsidies for solar and wind energy and taken away the tax relief for community energy projects has meant that more power is given to the big six energy companies and is taken away from people.
Okay. Very brief point, if you will.
You have both Labour and the Tories blaming each other. The one thing that each of them could have controlled when they were in office was the level of tax on fuel, whether it's gas, electricity or petrol, and none of them ever seem to bother to do it.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like green taxes, I mean, that's part of the reason why fuel prices, energy prices are so high.
Okay. And you've got to stop.
I'd agree with Corbyn, but Piers Corbyn, not Jeremy.
All right. Well, that's yeah, we might go into that another time. A whole new debate. Our energy is... Actually, our energy has not run out, has it? But we've got to stop, because the time's up.
I've been getting away with it all